He had the throne, and many spies, and a huge force of trained men, and no feelings at all about killing his father. He tried a number of times, but David got away, warned by his spies. And the day came, a terrible day, when tribe fought tribe, and Israel killed some of its finest sons, a great many. 20,000 men died that day. The battle was won, if such a battle can be won, by David's army. And Absalom died that day in a way that was almost farcical. He'd fought all day and watched his men and his hopes beaten into the dust. All was lost. He turned his horse and made for the nearby forest of Ephraim. As he entered the forest, he was snatched from his horse by the forked branch of a great tree, and there he hung, by the neck, helpless, wounded, dazed. Soon along the same track came some of David's men, and recognizing Absalom, they told Joab. He who less than 5 years before had arranged the forgiving of Absalom by his father, now ordered, he valued the rough justice of those times more highly even than the king's command, that Absalom be killed as a traitor. So Absalom was speared to death as he hung, and his body was taken down and buried in the forest, the last death of that terrible day. The news was brought to David, and the people saw no triumph, no elation, just a heartbroken man who'd lost a son. "Oh, Absalom," they heard him say, "would to God I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." David wept. But he was a practical man, and soon he put aside his grief and got busy. There was much to do. Tribes had to be made friendly again. The army, split in half, had to be completely reorganized. He knew that this civil war, begun by his own son, was part of the punishment God was giving him. "Out of your own house shall come evil," God had said. And more was to come, too. Later, another son was to try and steal the throne, and there was to be famine and pestilence. Poor David, who sinned for love and killed for love, was to suffer much. But Bathsheba, for whom he sinned and killed, was worth it. She became his favorite wife and a loyal and splendid mother to their son, who grew into a fine young man, full of a quiet modesty and wisdom. Wise beyond his years, people used to say. Not surprising. His name, you remember, was Solomon. The son who tried to steal the throne the second time was called Adonijah. Like Absalom, his brother, he was in line to be king anyway. But as David grew to be rather old, Adonijah got impatient and started to undo all the careful unity that his father had built up in Israel. He talked some of the higher-ups of the army and religion into joining him and held a sort of "I hereby crown me king" ceremony. Word of this came to old Nathan the prophet, now very old, and he told Bathsheba, who went to see David. "Once you promised me," she said, "that our son would be king, King Solomon. Now I hear that Adonijah has declared himself your successor. Solomon is much liked by the people, and the city is full of rumors and confusion. All Israel waits to be told the real truth." David wasted no time. He sent for the prophet Nathan and gave clear orders. "Go to Gihon," he said, "and take Solomon, who shall ride upon my horse and wear my crown. And take also Zadok, the priest, and at Gihon you shall anoint Solomon king, you and Zadok. Then the great trumpets are to be blown, so that Adonijah will know by hearing them that Solomon is the new king of Israel, and not he. Let there be no rumors and no confusion, only joy, for Solomon is God's choice, as well as mine." All this was done, and the word went through the land like wildfire, and the people were filled with joy, for Solomon was special, and they were sure that he would make a good king. This story ends on a quiet note. It ends as many old men's lives end, with the old man passing on some advice and a few thoughts to his son, the handing over of the reins. David was about 70 when he died, and his mind was clear to the last. Early in his reign, when he had wanted to build the great temple to God, God had said it would be built by his son, but that David could prepare and plan. So David gave to Solomon to the last detail the plans for the temple, and told him where the great stores of precious metals and rare woods and fine marbles were waiting in readiness. God has chosen you to do it, he said. A great task. But be strong and of good courage. Fear not. Be not dismayed, for God is with you. Then there was a great ceremony where David gave into the temple building fund his great personal fortune, and all the tribal leaders and the heads of houses and anybody else who wanted followed suit. Free will. And David, who was a great king because he could put things simply, said to God, "All this, Lord, that we give you, you first gave to us." And David died, the Bible says, in a good old age, full of days, riches, and honor. And Solomon his son reigned. But that, good friends, is another story.